I've got a tips and tricks video for you, and it's really a Q&A. So it is, what is the difference between Stampin' Write markers and Stampin' Blends markers from Stampin' Up? They're both markers, so you can use them to color, and they're great for coloring, both of them. And they both have two tips. So on our Stampin' Write, which have been around for a long time, there are two tips. One has, there's a bullet tip, which is actually quite a fine writing point, 0.5 millimeter. And then there is a brush tip. And I love these brush tips for lettering. So that's on the Stampin' Write. And on the Stampin' Blends, and I'm just using Night of Navy here just for comparison, on the Stampin' Blends there's also a brush tip, which looks like this. Not nearly as flexible as on the Stampin' Write marker. I was all excited thinking they'd be great for lettering, but they're not. So you have to treat it a little bit more delicately, I guess. And then there's also a bullet tip, and a much thicker bullet tip than there is on the Stampin' Write. Our Stampin' Write markers are not permanent, and the Stampin' Blends markers are permanent. And that means that you cannot use these on anything really except paper. But you can use the Stampin' Blends markers on all kinds of things like paper and ribbon and embellishments, plastic. It'll work on wood. I think it'll probably work on metal a little bit. Again, keep in mind about those tips, especially the brush tips, because it's more delicate, so you want to be careful what you're actually using it on. Another difference is that the Stampin' Write markers come in all of the colors that we have. So there are currently, as I'm doing this video, 50 different colors, including the 2 in color selections. And the Stampin' Write markers only come currently in 36 of our colors. And another difference is that you have one marker only for Night of Navy, but in the Stampin' Blends, you actually have 2. You have a light and a dark marker. And the reason is that we are blending color to get a little bit of that shadow. So they always come in a combo pack. The Stampin' Write markers are water-based, meaning that one, they're not permanent, but they react with water. So if you color something, and then if you have a glass of water that falls over on it, or you spritz it, that ink is going to move. This is not going to move. This is permanent. It is alcohol based. What it also means is that you can't stamp it with an alcohol based ink like your StazOn inks. You have to use something that is not alcohol based. One that we recommend is the Memento Tuxedo Black, which is great for this, for the Stampin' Blends. And you can use either for the Stampin' Write markers. And if you are going to watercolor with these, because they're great for watercoloring, you might want to heat set your Memento Black because it might move a little bit. But if you heat set it, it's got a pretty good chance of staying permanent there. Stampin' Write is best for coloring images or for watercoloring. For picking up a little bit of paint and coloring into a stamped image. You can also use, and I would recommend the brush tip for this, using it on its side. Whoop, wrong tip. Use the brush tip for this. If you take the brush tip and you can color directly onto your stamp, especially good on your rubber stamps, not as good on your photopolymer stamps, and then stamp with it. I would not recommend that you do that with your Stampin' Blends. They're not meant for putting onto a stamp and then stamping. They really are best for coloring and adding color to something that is a rigid kind of surface.